Let's review Lohfink 26 to 31, which we talk about God's slow and free revolution, right? And the question Lohfink opens up with is why have the major historical social revolutions failed to create a paradisical society? How come our efforts have not worked? Lots of people have tried to make the world a better place to live in. But these major revolutions, these major changes, as good-hearted as they might have began, as much as might have been desiring what God wants for us, a community of free, loving persons, they've made one big mistake, right? They didn't have the time. So there always has to be some element, there was always some kind of force was used, right? They tried to force people to be free. You can't, it doesn't work. You can't force someone to be free. You can't force someone to be a part of a community of loving persons. Love is a choice. People have to choose it themselves, right? So this use of force is the opposite of love, right? Which is a choice of the free will. Make sense? And so sooner or later, what happens? People start killing people who don't agree with them to bring freedom to people. Well, that's killing someone is the opposite of freeing them. You're giving them no choices. Hmm? Enslaving people, oppressing people. That's what always happens with these revolutions that are in a hurry. Let's change the world now. Bam, what happens? Nothing. So God works in a very, well, not nothing, terrible things happen. People are killed, enslaved, abused in ways I'm not even comfortable talking about here. And so the idea that we're going to free people by using force, it doesn't work. So God does it a different way, right? God does it by inviting. Invites. Right? He doesn't force. And he doesn't start with a whole bunch of people. No, God starts very small. Right? In this case, one person, Abraham. Because if you start with a bunch of people, what happens? You have pressure. It might be a very subtle kind of pressure and violence. Right? So got to start very small. Let's say just something as subtle as peer pressure. It doesn't mean anyone's going to kill you or enslave you. But it does mean that there is some kind of threat there. If you don't do what we want, something, maybe you'll be ostracized from the group. God didn't want to use any of that kind of violence or pressure. He starts with very small, with one person, so that the choice is a free one. There's no force or pressure. Now, I'm not saying that the Israelite or the Christian faith has always followed this. There's terrible examples of the Israelites and Christians trying to convert people by force throughout history. But this is not the way God did it, right? That's a result of our choice and our going to that whole religiosity, our putting our own desires. Oh, we want people to be like us. Well, that's not the way God did it. God's inviting all people. God invited all people, starting with Abraham, so that there is no force. He invited all people to become part of the loving community of persons, right? That we see ideologically symbolized in the New Jerusalem. So this gives you the reason why it has to start with one person, one particular place, right? So that the choice is a free one, no force or pressure. Remember, what's he trying to do? He's trying to create a society of loving persons. And you can't do that with force, right? You can't pressure someone. You can't force someone to be free. As a matter of fact, what happens? If you really love someone, you give them all the time in the world. Right? You don't force them. You give them time. You let them learn, make mistakes. Right? You wait for them. And so that's what God does. He starts with a very small group person who invites other people to join in, and he gives us plenty of time, right? He lets us get it wrong. He lets us learn from our mistakes because he loves us. I hope this helped. Study for the final.